The 2024 Met
Gala.
Utilize the sidewalk. You will be placed under arrest.
The Eurovision Song Contest.
This is the New York City Police Department.
It's a night to play dress up.
You are unlawfully in the roadway and obstructing vehicular.
Politically charged scenes in Malmö, Sweden, as thousands protest at the decision to allow Israel to perform while the war in Gaza continues.
Israel.
Have you ever seen destruction like this, even in the end of the world movies? No, we have never seen anything like this. And I mean, who's gonna repair this? Who's gonna rebuild this, huh?
Hello everyone, my name is Ellen and welcome back to Illiteracy. Today we're looking at two major events that played out on the global stage over the past week, the Met Gala and Eurovision. Besides the bold outfits, the campiness, and the performance art, these two events also had one more thing in common this year. They were both centered to controversy and protests surrounding Israel and the genocide that they're committing in Palestine. But watching coverage of either event without this context, you might not know that there was such discontent behind it. Not because these pro-Palestine protests were quiet or small by any means, but because they were also conveniently ignored or deleted entirely. And this is no accident. The Met Gala and the Eurovision have always had some level of politics involved in them, depending on your own political beliefs, what kind of discourse you engage in, and how much you know about each event. But this year it feels like things have been taken to a new level. With public attention so fixed on Palestine, tearing our eyes away from inhuman atrocities to fawn over the rich and powerful feels uncomfortable, unacceptable, and impossible for a lot of people. Speaking of Palestine, I'm a part of the Creators for Palestine movement, which you might have seen popping up in like your community tabs, your Instagram feeds, etc. It's a movement that is fundraising for on-the-ground charities in Palestine. We have a goal of $1 million. If you'd like to help reach our goal of $1 million, you can either click the link in the description of this video, or you can also find it in my Instagram bio. I've donated myself, and I'll also be donating money from this video's AdSense. So if you're not in a position to donate, that's okay. But a way that you could help if you'd like to is by turning off ad blocker and refreshing the page, because that is a super easy way, like very low effort way to help fundraise. Thank you to everyone who's already donated. I'll keep you updated when I get the AdSense and I donate it. We've already raised a lot of money, but I think we can raise a lot more. So, okay, onto the video. The Met Gala has run since 1948. It started as a fundraiser for the Met's Costume Institute, but over the years, with the influence of institutions like Vogue and people like Diane Vreeland and Anna Wintour, its status has ballooned to the fashion event, maybe even like the cultural event of the year. Buzz surrounds everything from the themes, to the performers, to the co-chairs, to obviously the outfits. And it seems like for that first Monday in May, all eyes, or at least all eyes online, turn to that infamous, sometimes red, sometimes not, carpet. The day of, and for days, if not weeks, following the Met Gala, there's discourse over who executes the theme, who absolutely slays and serves mother, which men have put in an ounce of effort and decide to wear something other than a black tux. Spoiler alert, not many. But as the years have gone by, I, like so many other people, have started to view the Met Gala less as, you know, this fun pop culture event where celebrities play dress up, but as a symbol of opulence and a gross display of wealth. And that is partly because like my own worldview has changed, but also because ticket prices have exponentially increased over the years, from $1,000 in the 70s and 80s to $2,000 in 1998, $3,000 in 2001, all the way up to $25,000 a ticket in 2016, $35,000 in 2023, and $75,000 this year. And with $75,000 tickets and hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars worth of designer attire, jewelry, accessories, etc., draped across the bodies of the immensely wealthy, the Met Gala feels like the epitome of the wealth gap, of grotesque and immoral wealth hoarding. And during a cost of living crisis across the world, a single Met Gala ticket costs more than the average wage in the United States, which is $60,000. And you may argue that, like, yeah, but it's a fundraiser, it's for the Met, it's for a good cause. But the Met isn't the only institution that profits off of this event. Vogue particularly, but also other brands like TikTok or designer brands are able to earn millions and millions because of the publicity. So it's not just like some selfless charitable act. This year, for many people, the tone-deaf display of wealth and privilege has taken on an extra layer of significance as it plays out not only against the backdrop of class inequality, but also active genocides in Palestine, Congo, and Sudan. Genocides about which many, if not most, of the celebrities in attendance have stayed completely silent, despite immense public pressure for them to speak out, especially in regards to the genocide in Palestine. But the United States has huge financial ties to Israel.
Look what is written here. USA. USA. These are the American weapons behind me that are used to destroy the buildings around me.
Hollywood is a microcosm in which people stay silent for fear of missing out on opportunities, for fear of losing sponsorships or brand deals, for fear of taking a hit to their wealth, fear of isolating the Zionist population of their audience, or maybe because they're Zionists themselves. I believe that the Hollywood Signs is much more kind of rooted in the financials rather than morals, but again, like, what morals could these celebrities have if they stay silent while tens of thousands of people are murdered and an entire country is razed to the ground? I don't know. And as well as that, there was also a class conflict playing out directly, like, in relation to the Met Gala in a way, like directly behind it. Condé Nast, the mass media company that owns Vogue, the company for which Anna Wintour is the artistic director, she's chief of content or something, and also famously the organizer of the Met Gala. It's one of the Met Gala's chief sponsors, and is also the center of conflict because the Condé Nast union has been rallying for wage increases, and they threatened to disrupt the Met Gala if a deal wasn't struck, and they ended up making a quote-unquote tentative agreement just 12 hours before the celebrities arrived on the red carpet. So interesting how that played out. Interesting to see what, like, actually motivated them to start bargaining. And speaking of, like, class conflict and class inequality, it is just crazy to watch the Met Gala play out and just see those celebrities walk the red carpet in hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of things, knowing the entire cultural context of, like, what's going on in the world. Like, millions of people in Palestine have been cut off from food and water and are, like, at risk of starvation and dying of thirst. And so it's just such a dystopian image, and it's just such, like, a disappointing image as well to see. That, like, accessory, that outfit, that image really just stood out to me as kind of really symbolizing the disconnect between these wealthy celebrities and, like, what's going on in the world. And the influencer Hailey Bailey also, like, unwittingly embodied this disconnect as well, and she's been subject to a lot of discourse because of it. She made a TikTok using an audio from the Sofia Coppola film Marie Antoinette saying "let them eat cake" while she was dressed up for the Met Gala. And at first I kind of felt like, do you know who Marie Antoinette is? Like, what the French Revolution is? You know, what that quote signifies? I didn't know Hailey Bailey before, but now, after having researched her, I find it hard to believe that a highly educated woman who graduated summa cum laude with a Bachelor's of Science degree doesn't have the bare, like, minimum amount of historical context and, like, intelligence and critical thinking. And if you're not aware, the context is this. It's Marie Antoinette was the Queen of France in the years kind of leading up to the French Revolution, when working class people all over France were starving, while the crown indulged in excess food, clothes, etc., etc. And a story arose that when the people told Marie Antoinette that people had no bread, essentially like that they had nothing to eat. She allegedly said, "Let them eat cake." And even though this is a really popular, well-known quote, it's since been pretty widely accepted by historians that she did not say that. She may have said, "Let them eat brioche." But the fact that like this story is believable and is very accepted in the first place underscores how out of touch she was with reality and like the experience of the common man. And nowadays, rich people are in the exact same boat, and they probably say even wilder out-of-pocket shit like, nobody wants to work these days, or we all have the same 24 hours in a day as Beyonce.
Get your fucking ass up and work.
Back to Hailey Bailey, it's just wild to me that you could have 10 million TikTok followers and like not think about what you're saying or doing for more than 10 seconds and realize that what you're doing is a bad idea.
I understand, truly. I understand why you feel like you can't say anything, but you don't have to say anything in order to help. This is something I'm realizing recently. This is a family I posted this morning. At the time I posted them, they had raised $15,000. At the time I took the screenshot, 5:30, they'd already passed their goal. So in 7.5 hours, they raised an additional $20,000. And I didn't say a single word about them. I didn't make a single video about them. All I did was just upload the link to their GoFundMe in my bio. Literally, I did not have to say anything. All I did was post a link to their page, and it still helped. So I'm not asking you to say anything. But again, you don't have to say anything to help. You might not think that would do anything, but I promise you it would.
I think she said in her apology video that she was just like using trending audio or whatever. It's just so like wildly out of touch, but also I guess like what can you expect from a woman who lives in an apartment in Soho that costs $17,000 a month? Her actions have spurred a movement to engage in a massive block list or a digital guillotine where people are blocking celebrities and influencers who haven't spoken up about Palestine since October 7th. And like we've already seen some like influencers scrambling to start speaking out about Palestine. And it's been interesting to see like which celebs and influencers are all of a sudden very passionate and like outspoken about Palestine. I think it's just so transparent what they're doing, just scrambling to save their money and save their asses. And also on TikTok, I've seen people talking about how the 2024 Met Gala feels extra dystopian, and people are editing clips of the Met Gala red carpet together with clips from the Hunger Games. And I think this trend or like format does a really great job of highlighting how our social feeds cycle through this like rotating door of dead babies and beautiful gowns. But I don't think anybody's brain is built to stay sane in the face of such emotional whiplash. The Palestinian genocide is the biggest major news story today, and it's probably the longest running news story that we have at the moment, having drawn like a significant amount of attention in October, which is 8 months ago. And it's also a highly emotional issue for people on like both sides, i.e. like the Zionists on this side and then, the people with morals and empathy and humanity on the other. The irony of this year's Met Gala theme has been subject to a lot of discussion as well. It's based on a 1962 short story by J.G. Ballard called The Garden of Time. It's super short. It's like less than 6 pages. I can link it in the description if you want to read it. And it tells the story of a young aristocratic couple who are like picking these kind of glass thyme flowers out of their garden in order to delay the arrival of this kind of horde of angry people that they can see in the distance. Quote, a vast confused throng of people, men and women, interspersed with a few soldiers in ragged uniforms pressing forward in a disorganized tide. The Count and Countess eventually pick all the flowers and, unable to fend off the siege any longer, their manor goes to ruin and they end up turned into statues at the end of the story. Many people, including myself, have interpreted this story as showcasing the lengths that wealthy people will go to, no matter how destructive, in order to retain their privilege, but also the futility of ignoring the discontent working class, which I think makes sense given that the crowd is described as, quote, some labored under heavy loads suspended from crude yokes around their necks. Others struggled with cumbersome wooden carts, their hands wrenching at the wheel spokes. Like every other year that the Met Gala has occurred, the 1% are ignoring class inequality and global concerns. Only this time it feels like people are less willing to indulge in the wealth fantasy and are instead demanding activism. And instead of being charmed or enamored by the wealthy, I think a lot of people feel kind of repulsed and disgusted and disappointed that they are not engaging in any meaningful activism. And like the angry crowd in Ballard's story, the Met Gala was surrounded by pro-Palestinian protesters. There were protesters working to disrupt the Met, but according to this New York Times article by Vanessa Friedman, quote, whatever protesters appeared were kept far enough away from the main event that most people focused on the party didn't even notice. The revolution was not TikTokized. There were arrests, but they didn't change the conversation. Friedman notes in the same article, no celebrity even showed up in a pin to support Gaza or the unionizers, as they often do at red carpet events like the Oscars. What really sticks out from looking at the Met Gala is, the sheer lack of backbone, of empathy, of compassion from all of these attendees. The fact that people don't have the courage or, even desire to take advantage of the fact that they're on a global stage, that millions of people will be looking at what they're wearing, what they're doing, and using that opportunity to say something, to take a stance, bring awareness to the fact that a genocide is happening. Yeah, it is disgusting and it is disappointing. If you're aware of the level of celebrity activism in regards to Palestine, then you probably already know that the Oscars had a similar, very notable lack of discourse. We saw some celebrities wearing the Artists for Peacefire pin and calling for a free Palestine on the red carpet. Rami Youssef is one celebrity who was quite outspoken that springs to mind.
Tell me about the pin that you're wearing today.
Yes, this pin is for Artists for Ceasefire. We have so many artists here tonight wearing it. We're all calling for an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Gaza. We're calling for the safety of everyone involved, and we really want lasting justice and peace for the Palestinian people.
And the Artists for Ceasefire pin, if you didn't know what it was, you'd have no knowledge that they are signifying their solidarity with Palestine. Wearing a pin to show solidarity is nice, but again, nobody's actually doing or saying anything, with the exception of the director of Zone of Interest, Jonathan Glazer, who directly referenced the events in Israel and Palestine in his speech.
All our choices were made to reflect and confront us in the present, not to say, look what they did then, rather look what we do now. Our film shows where dehumanization leads at its worst. It shaped all of our past and present. Right now, we stand here as men who refute their Jewishness and the Holocaust being hijacked by an occupation which has led to conflict for so many innocent people. Whether the victims of October the 7th in Israel or the ongoing attack on Gaza, all are victims of this dehumanization. How do we resist?
And it's interesting because the Oscars YouTube channel uploaded all the main speeches to their channel the day after the Oscars, but Jonathan Glazer's speech wasn't uploaded until a month after the Oscars. And his speech was met with division in the room. Everybody stands up to give him a standing ovation when he first wins the award, but then once he starts speaking out, there's a lot of celebrities that don't even clap for what he's saying. They just go stone-faced watching him. They can't even put their hands together in response to a condemnation of dehumanization. They can't even applaud a speech, which I think really shows how far their empathy can be stretched, which is about the distance from me to the camera. It's so disgusting because if you just pick a handful of these people, they could scroll through GoFundMe and finish every single campaign. They have so much money. They could save entire families if they wanted to, but they don't, and they haven't. We saw a similar collective reckoning around celebrity and how empty these people are, in their brain and in their morals when COVID hit, which was another instance which highlighted how disconnected they are with the everyday lives of people.
Yeah, people are gonna die. It's just terrible, but inevitable?
The Imagine video is a peak example of this, spearheaded by none other than Gal Gadot, who to this day has "Stand with Israel" in her Instagram bio. mean, the warning signs were there. But I think the recent silence, like over the past few months from celebrities and influencers, for that matter, has highlighted performative activism and virtue signaling in a very different way from before. We kind of saw it before with Black Lives Matter, of people posting a black square to their Instagram grid, but this level of silence really feels like something we haven't seen before. And the age of social media has magnified the activism or the lack of activism from celebrities, because celebrities don't have to hold a press conference or like wait for a major event in order to speak out. It's no longer 1973 when Marlon Brando refused the Oscar and instead gave the platform to Sachin Littlefeather, who made a speech criticizing the treatment of Native Americans in Hollywood and also drew attention to Wounded Knee. Nowadays, celebrities can do things like this from the comfort of their own home. They can literally do it while they're taking a shit. They can take 30 seconds out of their day to post a story, to make a video, make a TikTok, write a tweet. And it was interesting when celebrities did decide to do this, which was after October 7th, so many celebrities posted the I Stand With Israel graphic to their Instagram story. Seeing all those celebrities posting that graphic really made me realize how like empty the brains of celebrities are, and how greedy they are, because either they're Zionists or they just like hop on the bandwagon of sharing a political graphic without even knowing what it's about. So with the 2024 blockout upon us, don't be afraid to hit that block button.
Don't be afraid to hit that block button.
And I know it might be hard to block your fave on Instagram and realize that just because they seem like a woke ally and they seem like one of the good guys, at the end of the day, they're prioritizing their fame and wealth over humanity and empathy. It's tough. And it's also so easy to get caught up in the storm of the Met Gala, of looking at the outfits and like red carpet breakdowns, to like watch these pretty rich people and forget that a genocide is being committed, which is exactly what they want. And it's the same situation with the Eurovision. So let's talk about the Eurovision. For anyone who's not gay and or European and doesn't know what the Eurovision is, the Eurovision Song Contest is, as the name suggests, an annual contest where countries from all over Europe, and also contrary to its name, also outside of Europe, put forward a musical act to compete. It was created in 1956 as an attempt by the European Broadcasting Union, the EBU, to bring Europeans together after the kind of collective trauma of World War II. It's the competition where ABBA got their start in 1974, Celine Dion, the famous Canadian/Swiss queen, represented Switzerland and won in 1988. It's characterized by camp sensibilities, with, you know, lots of the music acts having fun costumes and crazy choreography. It's full of Europop performances, and I didn't know this until researching, but it's one of the most watched non-sports events in the world, with 162 million people watching in 2023. And non-European countries that compete or have competed include Australia, Russia, and of course, Israel. Russia was disqualified in 2022 because of its invasion of Ukraine, and they didn't compete in 2023 or 2024. Israel started competing in 1973, and they've won 4 times and I think hosted 3 times. Israel's inclusion featured heavily in news coverage of the event this year. Thousands of artists signed petitions for Israel's disqualification, and countries also threatened to pull out of the event unless Israel was excluded, which obviously did not happen. And this isn't the first time that Israel has been criticized in the Eurovision. When Israel hosted the Eurovision in 2019, the competitors from Iceland showed the Palestinian flag, and the flag was then taken from them by Israeli security, and the Icelandic broadcaster was also hit with a huge fine. And this is all because the Eurovision is not supposed to be political. Like, the EBU says that it is an apolitical competition, and this apolitical nature was the excuse for allowing Israel to compete this year. The EBU said that the competition was between broadcasters, not governments, and said comparisons between wars and conflicts are complex and difficult, and as a non-political media organization, organization, not ours to make. But Eurovision has ties to Israel beyond just the musicians that are involved. The hair care brand Moroccan Oil is one of the main sponsors of Eurovision and also happens to be Israeli owned. So the decision not to ban Israel could have been, and probably was, highly influenced by this financial factor. And again, going back to what the Eurovision said about not getting involved in, wars and conflicts and being an apolitical institution is really interesting, because I didn't watch the Eurovision this year, but I did watch it last year. In 2023, it was supposed to be held in Ukraine, but after Russia's invasion, they were obviously no longer able to do that. So it ended up taking place in Liverpool. But from the venue in Liverpool, there was such an outpouring of support for Ukraine. People were flying the Ukrainian flag. There was pro-Ukrainian messaging in the broadcast. There were songs that spoke to the desire for peace and for freedom. And that is actually the underlying message of the entire Eurovision. It says that it's about unity and peace. Okay, and how could sentiments like unity and peace even be apolitical in the first place? And the Eurovision has always been political. The impetus for its creation was the collective trauma from World War II and the desire to unify different countries. So it's just interesting and hypocritical to show such an overt display of solidarity for Ukraine and a critique of Russia, and then this year say that they're apolitical and allowing Israel to be included. You think that this sentiment would carry over, this desire for unity and peace would stretch maybe beyond Europe to reach a country like, say, Palestine, for example. That maybe this year we would see Palestinian flags, pro-Palestine messaging, calls for peace. But you'd actually be sorely mistaken, because it was the exact opposite. According to the BBC, ahead of the event at Sweden's Malmö Arena, fans were warned not to bring Palestinian flags, symbols, or bags into the audience. Strict security checks were carried out on members of the audience. The flags that were waved were only allowed to be of the countries that were participating, and pride flags. And again, a pride flag, LGBTQ plus flags are political because their rights are political, because human rights are political. They're fundamental, but they're matters of politics. And the Eurovision has always been a space for queer performers pushing boundaries and increasing visibility, which again, political acts. And those politics, the EBU is fine with, encourages even. But protesting a genocide? I guess not. It's always just interesting to see where people draw the line in terms of empathy. And Israel's 2024 song was initially called October Rain, a direct reference to the October 7th attacks from Hamas that have been used time and time again as a justification from Israelis and from Zionists for their subsequent razing of Palestine, the slaughter of its people. But the entry of this song was banned because it broke the rules of political neutrality. So Israel changed the name to Hurricane instead, and they also made some lyric changes because lyrics in the song originally alluded to the slaughter of the innocent and the fall of IDF soldiers, same soldiers who are killing innocent people in Palestine. And both the public and the performers in Eurovision have been unhappy with Israel's inclusion. A lot of people protested and boycotted Eurovision because of it while the Eurovision was occurring in Malmö, Sweden. An estimated 12,000 protesters took to the streets to protest. The discontent was also heard within the venue. The Israeli contestant Eden Golan was booed at the dress rehearsal, with people also shouting "Free Palestine." And people who were in the venue have said that the EBU toned down the sound of the booing and played audio of crowds cheering to, again, just sweep any kind of notion of discontent aside. The EBU has also clamped down on any kind of even subtler form of pro-Palestinian messaging. One of the opening acts, a Swedish performer of Palestinian descent named Erik Saade, wore a keffiyeh on his arm during his performance, which I think a lot of people know has come to be a sign of solidarity with Palestine. And afterwards, the EBU issued a statement expressing regret for this, saying, "All performers are made aware of the rules of the contest, and we regret that Eric Sada chose to compromise the non-political nature of the event." And like Eric Sada had to come back and say that his father gave him a keffiyeh, and it's like a symbol of his relationship to his father, like his country. Another performer who has been vocally pro-Palestine is Bambi Thug, who was Ireland's entry. As a part of their costuming, they originally had ceasefire and freedom for Palestine written in Om writing.
Why was it important for you to include those hidden messages in your stage costume?
It was very important for me because I am pro-justice and pro-peace. Unfortunately, I had to change those messages today to Crown the Witch only in order from the EBU.
Om is an ancient Irish writing form, which is basically like kind of lines carved into stone. And nobody except probably a very small group of like Irish or like Celtic historians would be able to understand Om just from reading it. It'd be like trying to read Braille or trying to read Morse code without knowing them. But obviously it's a lot less well known than either of those two languages. But even so, the EBU demanded that Bambi Thug remove the messaging from their costume. And just as a reminder, they did the complete opposite of like censoring any political messaging when it came to Ukraine. There was such an outpouring of support for Ukraine, as there should have been, but the hypocrisy, it's just so blatant. After the contest, Bambi Thug was very critical of the EBU in press conferences.
And the broadcaster incited violence against me twice, 3 times, and we brought it up to the EBU. They said they'd follow up. They waited till the last minute. We still haven't got a statement back from us. Allowed us to be scapegoats, allowed us to be the spokesperson for just standing up for ourselves, and yeah, the broadcaster has disobeyed the rules, and I hope next year they won't be allowed to compete because of that. And I just want to say, we are what the Eurovision is. The EBU is not what the Eurovision is. The EBU, I don't even care anymore.
Another point of drama around the Eurovision was in regards to the Netherlands entry, Joost Klein, who was disqualified after a dress rehearsal for allegedly making a threatening move towards a female crew member after he was filmed and asked not to be filmed, and then they continued to film him. And the Dutch broadcaster released a statement calling the disqualification disproportionate, and there were rumors that it was connected to the Israeli delegation, but the EBU have shut those rumors down. So I'm not sure what actually happened. It seems like the EBU is being like deliberately vague in talking about it, and it's the first time in the 68 years of Eurovision that a contestant has been disqualified after the event has started. Not to say it one more time, but it's interesting how quick they were to disqualify him for a threatening move, but jumped through so many hoops to justify Israel's presence at the competition, despite their threats, and their violence, and their murders. Just interesting. Also, at the end of the day, being apolitical is political. Choosing to ignore what's going on in the world around you shows that you have the privilege of being able to ignore it and that you're not affected by it. In this case, it shows that you're not in fear of losing your life. You're not in fear of your loved ones losing their lives because of Israeli bombs and bullets and blockades. It shows that your home, your country, has not been razed to the ground, that you're not at risk of starvation or dying of thirst. It shows that even if you're not in those situations, you're able to witness it online, you're able to see these events playing out in the news and just put it out of your mind. Ignoring a genocide and rewarding people from the country committing it with a global stage at a major event is not an apolitical decision. It's actually the exact opposite. Thank you all for watching Free Palestine. Please check out the link to donate. Please donate if you can. If you can't, again, just, you can watch this video without AdSense, help bump up the AdSense so that I have more money to donate. And like, as I said, I'll keep you updated with all of that. It takes some time for AdSense money to come through, but I'll keep you updated. In the meantime, take care of yourself, and I will see you in my next video.